podcast that connects the dots for business leaders to drive revenue through effective marketing strategy. We chat with marketing experts on different topics that will help you ramp up your revenue. We stream live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platforms. Marketing Demystified, the podcast, is presented to you by GrowGetter, your partner in growth marketing. And here's today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Are you ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered with actionable tips to transform your marketing game? You're in the right place. Welcome to Marketing Demystified. I'm your host, Jenn Mancusi, CEO and co-founder of GrowGetter, your growth marketing partner. Now, we all believe and know that marketing works, but there are some common barriers that can get in the way. The good news is it's possible to jump over them or at times run through them. But that all depends. So to discuss that topic of common marketing challenges, I'm joined by Drew Neisser, author of Renegade Marketing and founder of CMO Huddles. Welcome to the show, Drew.
Well, Jen, thank you. It's great to be here.
So glad to have you here. And also, it looks like you brought some friends with you. You've got a lot of penguins back there.
I do. So short story made longer. I was in the Galapagos and a guide, we actually swam with some penguins, and the guide told us that a group of penguins is a huddle. And the light bulbs went off, and I immediately called our creative director and said, hey, we got to get penguins in our brand. And then I learned later that penguins are smart and collaborative and resilient. And if those are three great adjectives for the CMOs in our community, I can't think of any better. And then just as a kicker, I got to know the Global Penguin Society, who was studying and working hard to preserve these wonderful birds. And we donate 1% of revenue of CMO Huddles to the Global Penguin Society. So thanks for asking.
Oh my gosh, I love that story so much. I love the Happy Feet movie.
Yes, exactly.
Such a sweet penguin story, but that's an even sweeter one. So I love being part of a little penguin huddle as a CMO.
And I got to tell you, one of the things that I know I'll talk about in a bit is B2B tends to be boring. And the last thing we wanted to do is be boring as a brand that supports a B2B marketer. So throwing the penguin in, wearing the penguin hat when I do our Tuesday tip videos just adds a little fun and lightness to what could be a bleak world right now.
Amazing. Yeah, we all need that. We all need a little bit of fun and a little bit of personality. So, I mean, let's talk about CMO Huddles. You talk to many marketing executives as part of your CMO Huddles work. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
So it started actually with a different community called the CMO Club, which at the time I was running an agency called Renegade. And we, as a way of being a partner, we did the first logo. I started interviewing CMOs, and I had interviewed a 100, and somebody said, hey, Drew, you got to write a book. So I wrote the CMO's periodic table. I kept interviewing CMOs. And then in March 2nd, 2020, when the CMO Club sold their business to Salesforce, I saw an opportunity. I just didn't think, and part of that was that B2B marketing and the club I was running the curriculum for the club at our summits then. And it was hard to get the attention that it deserved. So just boom, we started huddling April 1st, 2020. With about 18 CMOs, we met 55 times in a 6-month period. And in that time, it became clear there was a really wonderful opportunity for me to continue to help CMOs, bring them together, to help them, give them confidence and connections and some PR coverage.
Yeah. And I feel like, being a CMO at that time in the world, there were so many challenges that were very unique and new that we all had to navigate. So having a community and creating a community at that time, what a perfect opportunity to help to navigate some of those very new challenges everyone was having to deal with.
Oh, you're so right. I mean, first it was remote work, right? Then it was, are we coming back to work? Then it was Black Lives Matter. And it just kept going in terms of new issues, particularly from April 1st to October 1st. And it was through the course of those conversations that this initial group really, really bonded. And they helped shape the curriculum moving forward and the ways that we help CMOs interact both virtually and now in person more and more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, even navigating the not having any in-person channels to leverage as a marketer. I mean, that was such a,
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And you think back to as of March 1st, 2020, 50% of B2B dollars were spent in physical events.
Mhm.
Suddenly you couldn't do that. And it was fascinating to watch what some CMOs did. Some just gave the money back and said, we can't spend it. Others redirected it. And there was one example, and I write about this in my book. Always encourage CMOs to take 10% and leave it for experimentation, because you never know when something like a COVID kind of crisis could happen. This one CMO had put 10% of their dollars into a digital program while the rest of the money was over here. And then it turned out after they spent the money over here, they flipped it and put 90%, and their business did just fine. So, but they already had the pilot for that experimentation that they could expand with. So, so a lot of good lessons came out of the early days of the pandemic.
Yeah, so many good lessons. And so in those ongoing conversations, whether, maybe those 6 months aside of major challenges, what are some of the most common marketing challenges that you're talking about with CMOs?
So I think you could sort of look at it, and we'll put this in three buckets. They're macro issues, internal issues, and then leadership issues. And for the first one, I'd like to talk about macro issues. We did a study among 121 B2B CMOs. And what we learned in that study, that was earlier in this year, and there's just an article that opened up on it today on Marketing Profs. Anyway, that study found that there was essentially a hidden recession for B2B. I mean, they were facing longer sales cycles. Their close rates had dropped. And interestingly, in addition to the fact that the business environment had gotten significantly harder, 67% of the respondents said the pressure of the past year had affected their overall well-being. So it wasn't just that the CFO had become the CFO and that buyers weren't buying anymore. It was the impact of this of the hidden recession that really had an impact on their health. And then if I can, the next one is internal issues, but I want to make sure you see if you have any questions on the macro issues.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll bounce back and forth on this a little bit, because I think this is so interesting. So, as you describe some of those business challenges, like the marketing challenge being a longer sales cycle, or buyers not buying, or the CFO being the CFO, those are interesting because those are problems that there's a lot of pressure for marketing to fix those problems, but those are not marketing problems.
Well, exactly. They are not marketing problems. This is a sort of a reality that CMOs face more so than almost the CRO is right in there with them. But most often when we CMO lose their job because pipeline isn't where it's supposed to be, it's not a marketing problem.
Right.
It's a combination. It's a go-to-market problem. It's a bad, there's a fit, there's a pricing issue. There's a overall sort of positioning issue. And a lot of sort of, if you think about it, a lot of these $50, $100 million companies that were single product things really hit the walls. Mm-hmm. And the ones that did well were ones that had in the last 2 years, had a huge installed base and had a number of products that they could upsell and cross-sell their existing customers. Mm-hmm. So you had the CMO spending 90% of their dollars on trying to acquire new customers, and nobody was buying, when in fact, had they spent 50% on customer marketing, their numbers probably would have looked pretty good. Mm-hmm. So anyway, you're right. The problems that they're facing are, I'm not saying that there aren't marketing problems, but the big macro issues like the hidden recession that doesn't get a lot of press it's a big issue. And that leads to another issue, which is they got their budgets cut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's it's so interesting to me that, the pressure that is really hurting the mental health of a CMO or whatever, however it was described, is really that expectation that you're going to solve another problem in the business.
So I write these posts on LinkedIn every Saturday that I sort of call them, they're like little editorial bombs. And one of the headlines was, and they typically start with a quote from a CMO. And one of them was, "I'm not a miracle worker." And that was a real quote from a CMO. Well, that one, by the way, that one went viral. And I mean, literally over 100,000 impressions because it resonated so much. And I thought, oh my God, all these CEOs out there are being asked, given ridiculous demands, less budget, fewer buyers, and being told grow the business. And the delta is impossible. So they aren't miracle workers because in order to solve the business problems, you have to get alignment on product. You have to get alignment on positioning. And a lot of these brands aren't differentiated. Some basic stuff. So, again, I got another stat for you, which I think is interesting. 76% of the B2B CMOs say they're under more pressure to deliver pipeline results, and 69% say they were asked to do more with less in the last 12 months. Mm-hmm. Deliver more, spend less. Now you're talking miracle worker time.
Yeah. And so this is that internal issue that you were talking about.
Exactly. It's that their expectations of what a CMO can do and the realities of several factors, which you've hit on. One is that it's not a marketing problem. And, it's just, and this gets to the next one, which is sort of leadership, which is they really need to persuade the C-suite of the fundamental need for differentiation from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. And they don't get there. And it's really hard because the CEO just says to the salespeople, go sell more this quarter. And the salespeople say to the marketing people, give us more leads. It's not a winning formula.
Not at all. And it's so like these challenges, I mean, so resonate, right? Like anybody out there, marketers, or everybody's nodding their heads right now. And I just wonder why. Like why are the expectations on marketing so overinflated? We have a lot of conversations with, just people out in the world, out in B2B space. I have a lot of conversations with CEOs who say, my goal for the year is 2 million in revenue, and I expect $1 million of that to come from marketing, and I have $50,000 to spend. Like that is the ROI, just the math on that doesn't math, right? Like the ROI on that spend isn't realistic, and even when it's numbers on a page, it doesn't quite compute. So why is that? Why are the expectations so unrealistic for marketers? And why is it so, I guess, hard to see why they need to kind of present differently?
Well, it's funny. I spent a lot of time thinking about this and a lot of time talking to CMOs about this. And the first easy answer is less than 20% of CEOs B2B CEOs have any experience in marketing. But if you ask them, do you know marketing? 80% will say with confidence, I totally understand marketing and how it works. So there's an education gap that is very hard for a CMO. I mean, it's completely doable. And I know some great CMOs who do it because they say, here's my playbook. Here's based on how I believe marketing works. Let me do this and I'll grow your business over time. That's an unusual scenario. And so that's part one of this is expectation mismatch and an unrealistic expectations on the CEO part because they have no experience. part two of this is hubris
Hmm.
in the sense that I'm a leader CEO. I'm an entrepreneur. I figured out how to write this code. You damn well can figure out how to market it. Just go do it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it comes from a place of ignorance. And then there's a weird thing that I've noticed, and this is, I don't know how trend, but there's a recruiting thing where the CEO says, oh yeah, you have a budget, you have a staff, and I believe that we're aligned on expectations. And then once they've secured that person, it's a bait and switch. They actually never believed in marketing, but they like the idea of having a CMO. It's crazy stuff out there. And again, great CEOs know what their job is. Hire great people, allocate budgets, build a team, set the vision, build a team, and allocate resources and get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you find a real problem with the CEO, CMO, it's because the CEO doesn't know how to do their jobs.
Right.
Sorry, CEOs. I write about not so favorably to a lot of entrepreneurial CEOs who haven't learned how to do their jobs.
Yeah. And I do feel like we should give some love to the CEOs who are doing a great job and are hiring and trusting their CMOs. They probably have growing businesses. So good job.
Oh yeah. And by the way, I published an interview this week that I had on Saturday with a CEO who is fantastic. And if you read it, it's on my LinkedIn post from Saturday. If you read it, you go, oh my God. I called and I said, there ought to be a prize or a list of the luckiest CMOs in the world because they work for the people like this guy.
Yeah.
And that's what it takes. You need to, and you need, you need a great product to compete. You need a great leadership to compete. You need a great brand to compete. And all those things come together when CEO, product, CMO, sales are all aligned.
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. Now, sort of thinking about these like macro forces, internal forces, leadership challenges that marketers are facing, how is that creating barriers to effective B2B marketing for CMOs or marketing teams in general?
Sure. So if you don't understand the notion of strategy, which is essentially finding your place in the world, where do you belong? It's going to be hard to appreciate what a good strategy is, what a focused strategy is, and you're instead going to think about our product is better than these guys. Period. End of story. And you're not going to get to a meaningful, differentiated, and focused strategy. So that's barrier number one, and you could do a full stop there.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the CMO accepts a non-focused, non-differentiating strategy, they're in trouble from day one. So that's part one. Next is where dollars are allocated based on the objective. So the CEO says, or the CFO, we're going to grow 25%. It's not a number that was based on anything that happened the year before or pipeline or it. Just that's the goal. That's the business objective. Go. Nice goal. But so in order to do that, what happens is the CMO overspends on demand gen. They overspend on MarTech so that they can show the demand gen is working, and they underspend on reputation building. So all those are really a formula for disaster.
For sure. And, I think too, like just your comment about the MarTech to be able to prove that the demand gen is working, like that when the CFO is the one sort of driving that, here's your budget, here's your goal, go do it. They're looking for, that is the mindset of somebody who is looking for those numbers. And how do you effectively measure and report to a CFO the impact of reputation building?
Right. And by the way, it is completely doable. And in my book, I talk about how you want to have at minimum three different buckets of metrics. You want to have sort of a brand health metrics. You want to have customer health metrics, and then you want to have sort of, we'll call it demand gen health metrics, right? Mm-hmm. And you can put one or two KPIs under those, and you can create. And what the thing that I really want to encourage when you do metrics is look at trends, not absolute. If you look at the trend, like for example, let's talk about brand health, and you measure, well, we'll create a blended brand health based on site traffic, organic search performance, webinar attendees, booth visitors, all these sort of very soft metrics. But nonetheless, you can show trends. Are they going up or are they going down? Because if they're going down, it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, you can just sort of do that with your brand health metrics. With customer metrics, I mean, most people have some form of customer satisfaction, but I don't think people spend enough time thinking about that, because if they did, their retention rates would be higher and their referral rates would be higher and their community would be singing their praises. But again, you're looking for trends there. And then finally, and this is where we just did a show on metrics. And again, the CMOs mainly talked about revenue-based metrics, pipeline, cost per acquisition, lifetime value. Great measures. But if that's the only thing you're going to be measured on, you're only going to spend money on demand gen, and you're going to miss the bigger opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, there's been an evolution. I know we've talked about it a lot on the show, and a lot of marketers are talking about this sort of shift, the very intentional language behind moving from lead generation to demand generation, and that by its nature, it should include reputation building. Like, creating demand is about more than generating leads. It's about building up a brand that people want to engage with and want to convert. And so, sort of thinking of demand gen that way, and not in this sort of original definition of like a demand gen marketer was running paid ads for you, right? Like, thinking of it more holistically and more sort of full journey. And how are you creating that demand earlier in the funnel before people are converting, and measuring against that so that you're not doing what you're saying, overspending on really driving leads, because that's what others in other areas of the business tend to be looking for. How many leads did we get this month, right? How many of those turned into opportunities? And like you said, those are great things to measure, but it's not everything.
Yeah, and it's funny. So two things that I love that. So there is, and I understand why CMOs want to do it, which is sort of marketing sourced or marketing influence, right?
Mm-hmm.
There is no such thing as of a purchase product today. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking B2B or B2C, that marketing doesn't input, because think about it, one way or another, you discovered that brand somewhere and you went to their website. Who creates the website? Marketing.
Yeah.
Right. So I really am not a fan of marketing touch, because if marketing didn't touch an opportunity, then something's really wrong. So we shouldn't necessarily be thinking about touches. My problem with the way we think about demand generation is, if you looked at it really and you said, we're kind of looking at it demand capture, which is the 5% of the people that are in the market at any time. And then there's demand creation. And some people will take issue with that. I'm okay with it, in the notion that you are building reputation in the market. You are capturing mind space, because I define marketing as a heroic battle for mind space. That's what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's, if you don't have mind space, you don't exist, and you're not going to get an RFP. And so you got to have mind space, and that's what marketing's job is to do. I love the quote, there's no such thing as demand without brand. I definitely would say there's no such thing as revenue.
Yeah.
You don't close a deal without a brand.
Absolutely. I mean, that, I feel like we should say that again, right? In case you missed it, there's
Yeah.
no such thing as a purchase that wasn't touched by brand and marketing in some way.
Right.
Someone discovered you, or they even if somebody directed you to their website, like you said, built the website, you wrote the messaging that got them to fill out the form. There's a lot of, nobody is, just kind of going through one singular channel to get to a purchase. No matter how short the sales cycle or easy the purchase is, there's always going to be multiple touch points. Some of them are marketing, some of them are sales, some of them are product, depending on the type of business. But there is no such thing as a purchase that happens without brand. That is so powerful. I hope everybody heard that.
So, and I want to build on this. I'm going to throw this out there and say, imagine the marketer that spent 90% of their marketing dollars on existing customers. So, and go with me for a second. So that means you have a customer advisory board who's helping you with your roadmap. You have awards where you're recognizing those and your best customers and giving them testimonials. You have user conferences. You have small group dinners and salons where you bring in another customer, a potential customer along the way. Imagine that for a moment. And the value that the marketer would create, because if you're thinking about your customer, you're thinking, what can I do to help them use our product better? What can I do to help them perform better in their jobs? What can I do to help them look like a hero? And your mindset shifts from, oh my God, we got to get them from this webinar to a sale. That's not, you're forcing something. Whereas if we spent all our dollars on customers, or a huge percentage of that, and I can't find anybody willing to do that yet but there are companies out there I know of that spend a disproportionate amount of dollars on their customers and reap the rewards. They have zero churn and they have consistent growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think actually like the selling point internally, maybe not so much on the satisfaction and the retention side of things, but on the expansion side, if you can prove internally, if we're talking to very, sort of numbers focused people internally about customer acquisition costs, the cost to acquire new revenue from existing clients is a lot lower than the cost to acquire new revenue.
In
And
theory.
so, in theory.
And
I think that's certainly been true in my experience too.
right.
But I'm sure it depends on the business as well. But if you can make that argument, and maybe you're starting out spending 10% on customer, but show that comparison and make that, like, shift that percentage over time to really kind of earn the right to focus more on customer marketing. I think it is a hugely forgotten piece of marketing in a lot of companies.
It is, and it's also the most. If leverageable was actually a real word, then it would be that, because everything you do for your customers will make getting sales easier, but almost nothing you do to try to get sales helps your customers.
That's such an interesting way to look at it.
And it's so, because you go from a customer enablement mindset to, I got to sell you something. Mm-hmm. Whereas I want to be helpful to my customers, I want to sell you something. I mean, it's just such a different mindset. And again, if you're a small business and you don't have that many customers, I know you're saying, well, I can't do that. I don't have enough customers. I get it. But there is so much to be said for a customer mindset. And I'd stay one step backwards. In my book, I talk a lot about employees and the power of happy employees equals happy customers. So I think marketing is completely backwards, and I write about it, is all the dollars go into acquisition, minimal dollars go into customer retention, and nothing goes into employees. And if you thought about it and you flip that a little bit, your employees were happier and more motivated and believed in the company because it has a clear position in the marketplace that they're proud of. And then you got customers who really believe in the promise that your employees are sharing. You just build a juggernaut.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. And I mean, like you said, it's, if your focus is on making your customers, more satisfied or getting what they need out of your product, you're creating a better product, which should be more attractive to new potential buyers. Right. Anyways, you should, in theory, try harder, try less hard, not try as hard to sell the new business, because you've got so many happy customers that you've just improved their experience and the product for them, that in turn is going to attract that new business.
I do have a case I write about in the book, and it's from this paper company. I mean, it's literally like the office. They sell paper. The difference is they are selling paper to printers, and they've built. It's an almost 80-year-old family-owned company, third generation of the founder now runs the company, and they. We've had some fun. This was back in when we ran Renegade as an agency. We actually helped them with their positioning, and the positioning was case paper on the case. And all we said to employees is, on the case means you're reliable, resourceful, and responsive. Those are your three things. That's it. And so it's not if the customer calls and says, I need 10 bushels of X, you give them 10, you say, oh, you want X? But I could help you get Y, and you probably save you 10%. So they're resourceful, they're reliable, and they're responsive. And then on the case is a pun, and this is a brand that has a sense of humor, and they have a lot of fun with dad humor in the brand, and it's colorful brand, and it's a fun brand, but it's built on the notion that they are gonna win on the retention and making their customers smile.
I love that. I love that, the example of the paper company, which on paper might feel a little stale, right? But making it fun. I mean, even on the sort of consumer side, seeing what happened, years ago with the car insurance space. Like, what could be more boring than buying car insurance until you have, mayhem and the emu and all of these different, the gecko. You just create this experience with that's a great example of investing in brand in a way that goes beyond just trying to make that sale.
Yeah, insurance is an interesting one in that, like, car and home you have to have, but life insurance is sold, not bought. It is a case where and so somebody's going to go out there and try to sell that insurance policy. And if they don't have air cover, if they don't have mind space already crafted, the phone's going to hang up. The door's not going to be open. Their call, whatever it is not going to be accepted. So, but it's not that different in the case of B2B, in that, a lot of the brands out there, unfortunately, they require some education in B2B. And so you do need to get some mind space, and you need to join that heroic battle.
For sure. For sure. So what sort of recommendations do you have for marketers to overcome some of those barriers and be able to kind of make that shift from, the overspending in MarTech and demand gen to that reputation building that's so important?
So the first thing and really understand what strategy is, focus on strategy first. And, in my book, I talk about having the courage to create a really tight, highly focused strategy and defining it in a way like on the case where it's so simple. Everybody can get it and hear it, and they can feel the brand. There are some strategists who will say you don't need to have the clever words. I'm a believer that if you can get to those 8 words or less, you have a much better chance of seeing it executed across the organization. But it's all strategy. And you really need to understand that. And if you read the interview that I just did with the CEO, he talked about how he sees the CMO as this chief strategy officer. Man, that's awesome. That's what you want to be. You want the seat at the strategy table. You want to drive that agenda. And you got to think about strategy not as brand. It can't just be color, logo, website. Those are good things, but that's brand strategy. I'm talking about company strategy. So that marketing gets baked in. If you can do that, you're going to help transform your organization. If you're just changing the logo, you're going to be looking for a new job. And it's unfortunately, I've seen that a lot. So my second recommendation is don't rush to replace the website and the logo, because that's in your first 3 to 6 months. If you can find quick wins, and we have a long list of them, if you want them, just ping me. But we have like 25 things that you can do in the first 6 months that will be a quick win. Great. While that's happening and you bought some time and bought a little reputational goodwill, think about strategy on the highest level, not on just the brand level, and getting a new color and getting a new logo, because that's just not the formula. Next, or you want me to stop and you want to go through those?
No, keep going. Keep going.
Okay. So then we can get to, now we have a new strategy, right? Now we can build the website, because the website's going to go against the strategy of the business. Oh, we're going to focus more on our customers. Oh, well, then we have to have our customer centric story much up to the top, right? And we found the place where we're going to win, and we're going to go after that with a new product. And this is the problem I have most of the time when CMOs come in and they change the website and the logo and the brand. They don't change the product. That's coat of paint on an old barn. That is a waste of time. If your product isn't changing, it's not a strategic change. Should I repeat that? If you don't change the product, you're not changing your strategy. So those two go together. And again, so if you're going to do a new website and a new logo and a new color and all that good stuff, make sure you're changing the product too. That's your litmus test. Okay, now we got a new strategy, right? Fine, we're going to build this new website, and maybe we need a new color because everybody in the category is blue, and maybe we need a new logo because we've acquired 5 companies and we have a different promise, and our old one looks stodgy. Fine. Then rethink your budget allocation from just an overall standpoint. How much are you spending on MarTech? If you're spending more than 10%, stop it. If you're spending more than 30% on staff, that's a tricky one, but that's a good number to go. And then 60% on programs. And why 60%? And what I hear, we've talked to hundreds of CMOs, and more likely it's probably 45% staff, 45% programs. That's kind of a standard balance. That's a problem. It means that you're spending more money on people than you are on your reach. You're limiting your audience. You're not spending enough. And I don't care whether you're spending on events or you're spending on billboards or whatever. If you're spending it on overhead, that's not working media. Okay. And then the last thing is rethink of that 60% you're spending on programs. How much of it is chasing the 5% of the buyers that are in the market today? Because if 90% is focused on what you use the term demand generation, I'll call it demand capture, that's a problem. Because it means you're not spending much on customer marketing, and it means you're not spending any on demand creation.
Yeah, for sure. It's such a good, an important kind of point to make, that, most of the people that you are wanting to sell to are not in the market to buy when you're getting in front of them. So trying to capture that demand in the moment, as you describe it, is going to fall short 95% of the time. Ouch, right? That's like such a painful reality, but right. That's why it's so important to focus on that reputation building. And before I forget, we definitely want to get our hands on those 25 quick wins and share them with the audience, because I think that's a great way to focus your early days as a CMO, as to what can you make a big impact on quickly while you're planning out your longer term strategy. And I'm curious to go back a little bit. You kind of touched on this in a couple pockets, but what are some examples of where you should replace your website and your logo? You mentioned you're changing the product, or, the color is very common. Could you kind of walk through some of those examples?
Copy link. Yes, I will. I'm just sharing with you. Good, if I can, but I don't. Can I share? Oh, no. Anyway, I was going to share the link with you, but let me see if I can do that. Here it is. Boom. This is the quick wins doc.
Amazing.
Okay. And I don't know. I think I just put that in private, so you can share it.
We will.
Okay. So that was that. So I'm sorry. Now, having done that, of course, I forgot your question.
No problem. Just thinking about, some of the examples where you actually would want to work on your website and your logo. Like, what are some of the things that you might discover as a CMO in a new business that actually that is the right strategy for you early on?
Right. So often you've acquired another company. And when the two companies are actually mashed together, you realize that the company's offering has changed dramatically. You might have a whole new target segment to deal with. You may have a whole new product line to deal with. And so, you're going to market with a different story, because it is that, in theory, with acquisitions, 1+1 = 100, right? I mean, you have this massive effect. So, and I've seen that where brands realize they need to, because of mergers, they need a new website. Now, I do want to caution one thing on this, because I've seen this happen more often than you would believe. There's no migration strategy. And if there's no migration strategy, you can kill 30 to 50% of your business just by turning off a website. Believe it or not, Oracle did this with Eloqua and then turned it back on. And I talk about this in a podcast episode. So you need 12 to 24 months to manage your migration strategy. Think about it this way. You've been working with X company, you have hundreds of customers, and we'll call that brand Windows Incorporated. You go to the trade show and the company has changed its name to Doors Incorporated. You're not going to know that Windows is Doors now. And so you're going to not stop at the booth. Booth traffic will go down. Well, the same thing happens on the website. So you have to have a migration strategy. So that's a big, mergers are one, a new product is another. Just let's say you've expanded your audience, even just existing things, or over time you become something different. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I mean, there are brands that start out as small business oriented and end up becoming enterprise oriented. And often what happens is they change they go from this nice, friendly, small business oriented brand to this enterprise dull brand. But nonetheless, there is a reason why you need, because there's probably functionality that the enterprise needed that you didn't have on your small business site.
Yeah, that makes sense. So don't rush into it. Be strategic about the reasons why. It doesn't mean there's never a reason to, create a new website. Obviously, there's always a reason. Just make sure it's a good one. Focus on some of those.
Well, and let me say, and in that, one of the things that's in the quick wins is A/B testing of landing pages. We're big fans of the work of an agency called Spiralize. They just do amazing A/B testing, and they have skin in the game when they do it. That's a great thing to test, because you can, if you have organic site traffic, or even driven site traffic, you can optimize those things, and you can learn a tremendous amount before you just go and jump and say, oh, we don't like this face, we're going to change it and make it green with this. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And, I think that's such a great way to get a little refresh of your site, especially if it's content focused. If you're going in and, some of the things you mentioned, like no differentiating strategy. So if you come in and you develop that brand story that's really unique and are able to work within the framework of the existing website, but just update the content in a way and test it and optimize it, you don't need to build a whole new website to have a new website experience, and make something work for you that maybe wasn't before, which I think people maybe don't think about. They just think, oh, the website's not working, we need a whole new one. And actually, you could probably just edit the copy and make a huge impact if it's done really strategically.
Yeah, I would add to that, and create some tools that are of value to customers and prospects, that make it easier for them to make a purchase decision, a buyer's guide, sales enablement stuff, all the stuff that Brent Adamson talked about in Challenger Sale and Challenger Customer. Those kinds of things often are missing. You're making it hard, like you don't have a pricing page and everybody else does. There are some things like that you can do, again, put your buyer mindset and say, okay, if I were a buyer, what would I need? And then make it really easy for that prospect to find it. Yeah, those are things that if you don't have that on there, and oh, by the way, we haven't talked about AI at all, but that's one of the wonderful uses of AI is to help you think about, gee, I'm a buyer and this is my persona. I'm about to purchase one of 3 CMS tools. What kind of things do I need to know? And I'm from the government industry. So what do I need to know? And what tools would help me? And you can workshop all of that stuff with generative AI. And then let's say you came up and you say, classic example, ROI calculator. And you said, I want to, we don't have an ROI, we need one. Then you go to generative AI and say, I need to build a ROI calculator. What are the 10 steps to do it? Okay, help me write the code.
Mm-hmm.
That's genius. But you can, and I like to think of Gen AI for CMOs as a sparring partner, not as a copywriter, as a sparring partner.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Yeah. I mean, I think there's so many different ways that people describe it. Sparring partner is that's new. I've never heard that before. I love that one. That's sort of like your co-pilot or, somebody you can bounce ideas around, but definitely like it is such a powerful tool to create efficiency. And just the example you described of like, write the code for this ROI calculator that I want to build. But you have to be the one inputting the good ideas.
Right.
Don't ask generative AI to create good ideas for you because they're not unique, right? So use your expertise to create the good idea and then leverage generative AI to create that efficiency to actually execute on what your good idea is. I mean, so powerful when it's done right. And I think the internet and the buyers are smart enough to identify the generative AI generated ideas and content versus.
Yeah. I mean, if you're using it to create blog posts just to speed it up, you're wasting your time.
Totally. Though it is a great way to, inject some fun tone into something or, give an idea, have I missed anything? There's so many good applications. But don't expect it to do the fun work for you, the creative work, and kind of coming up with those good ideas to begin with.
It's true. And I mean, what we don't need is more bad content.
Definitely not. There's enough of it. We've got plenty of that. So let's create some good content. Drew, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you for inviting me into your huddle today. Now, CMO Huddles has an event coming up, right? Can you share a little about that?
Oh my God. I'm so excited. We like to say it's going to be flocking amazing. CMO Huddle Super Huddle. It's the CMO Super Huddle is November 8th in Palo Alto. Attendance is limited to 101 B2B marketing leaders. We have some incredible speakers lined up, and Liz Weissman, who wrote Impact Players, and Matt Abrahams, who wrote Think Faster, Talk Smarter, are also joining us for fireside chats. I'm so excited about this. And we have early bird tickets are available for another couple of weeks. So we've just released 50 and half of them are gone. So grab those. Fly on over to cmohuddles.com/super-huddle, or just go to cmohuddles.com and you will find the link.
Amazing. Thank you so much. We will share out the link to that CMO Super Huddle as well for everyone listening. Again, Drew, thank you so much. This was such a great chat.
Jen, my pleasure. Thank you for doing this show. I know how much work it is.
It's a lot of fun too. So thanks for being a part of it. Thanks, everyone.